Okay, so He Is Waiting, also known as Divine, is a song that's got a very interesting history. As I was finishing up work on my previous album, The Family Life, I was previewing a lot of these songs on a website called numberonemusic.com. I was using their ranking system as a way of kind of workshopping the songs and figuring out whether or not they actually clicked with the people. And in this case, it actually did in a different sense. This one song called Growing Part 3, which was part of an instrumental suite on the album, it attracted the attention of this French singer named Denis Landof, who wanted to actually write words to it and release a version with him singing on it. I was very flattered by the idea, but I was kind of preferring to release Growing 3 as a part of Family Life, with it being sort of this concept album rock opera thing. But as a compromise, I did suggest that after the dust had settled from that album, I could write an original piece of music for him to put lyrics and vocals onto, and he agreed. And in the hiatus that had followed Family Life, I put together this backing track for him, which he released as Divine, to some measure of success. So I'm just going to play a little bit of that for you before we get too much into this.
Il voulait la défaire d'un regard, d'une caresse. Il ne sait comment faire pour lui plaire à sa déesse. Il attend dans le noir au détour des sentiments. Oh. Calmement sans déboire, il attend le bon moment. Oh.
Okay, Denis basically took care of the vocal himself and sent me the finished MP3 for me to layer into the track for proper mixing. So I can't really tell you what treating he put on it. It sounds like he put a little bit of reverb on it. It's a little bit blown out for my own taste. I maybe should have suggested a retake, but Divine, his version of it was basically his own song, so my sort of unwritten rule is that the client, so to speak, gets to play around with that himself. The only other thing that Denis really did to the vocal was something at the very end, which is when I'm scrolling internally towards. Excuse me. I hadn't really come up with an ending myself to the thing. I sort of left the lyrics to Denis, which is why even in the English version he remains credited as a co-songwriter. But I didn't really specify a structure. I sort of had my own thing in my head for the chords and the melody, but other than that, I just sort of let Denis handle the rest. And what I didn't expect was he sort of put this tag on at the very end, where the instruments disappear, and he just does this one last line with a little bit of echo treat. He did that on his own, and I love the idea, but I thought it sounded a little bit odd by itself, so I replicated it in the chorus sections as well, just a little bit here and there. And Denis loved that touch. He said that he said I got a knack for producing, which is a bit of a dangerous thing to say to somebody who's desperately trying to make it as an independent musician, but we won't get into that now. So anyway, this is the very end of the French version.
Je te regarde fuir sans espoir. Oh ma divine, où vas-tu?
And just a quick switch around of the tracks here. Hold on. Okay, sorry. And He Is Waiting. This was my version, the English one.
Oh my divine, where are you going? Oh my divine, where are you going?
Incidentally, when I sent the finished version back to Denis of He Is Waiting, naturally I was a little bit curious how he felt I did with the song. He actually really liked my version of it. He said that I was very faithful to his interpretation of it, but he also was kind of he said this one comment that I found really amusing. He said that it was sort of sounding like David Bowie doing his music. Fortunately for him, I really admire David Bowie, but that was not a comment I ever expected somebody to give about my singing, especially considering how many people think that I'm borderline tone deaf. Okay, in terms of the production, the only other thing that is really notable is that this is the first time that I really took the rhythm guitar tone that I had since developed after Family Life and sort of put it into the real world. I've done a lot of experimenting up to this point, but this is the first time I put it in a real song. So I don't know how well you can read the icons here, or those of you who are familiar with guitar amps in the first place anyway. But what I settled on for my rhythm guitar sound was basically a mix of a high watt amp and an orange amp. Excuse me. Basically because I thought both of them had a good texture and tonal combination, especially when you put them together. And that's the advantage of an amp simulation, is that you can easily combine tones like this. Mind you, especially with my electric rhythm playing being as simplistic as it is, I certainly could have done this with physical amps. It just would have been a lot longer to do, and quite frankly, it probably would have been very expensive considering I would have needed to actually buy several amps in order to do this. But anyway, this is what my rhythm guitar sounds like for those of you who are curious. So nothing terribly fancy. It's basically just the chords. On some songs, I get a little bit elaborate, play these little fills, but a lot of times I just sort of let the basic chords handle that end of it, and I let the other accompaniment instruments kind of fill in the backing track. It's sort of a minor annoyance of mine with rock music when you bother to throw in all these instruments and they kind of collide with each other. You can't really hear them. With heavy metal music especially, this bothers me a little bit because why would you bother with this heavy-duty bass guitarist if you can't even hear him in the mix? And as much as I like Foo Fighters, I don't understand why you have 3 or 4 guitarists on stage at a time when there's only so many parts they can play. I don't care how good any of them are, with all due respect to those guys. It's really hard for me to discern anything more than maybe 2 or 3 parts at a time. So that's why
He wanted to see her, enjoy her caress.
yeah, I just wanted the bass and the strum and acoustic guitar and the vocal and everything to have their own space. Not so much their moment in the limelight, especially considering that technically all of this is me, but I like to let everything have its room to breathe. I don't really want anything to be drowned out, otherwise it doesn't serve a purpose. And for those of you who are really interested in the nitty-gritty of my guitar tone, I sort of emulate Brian May in the sense that less is more. I really let the amp simulation itself do the majority of the work, and that I turn up the gain a little bit, and I fiddle with the EQ, the frequency knobs to a large degree. And as far as pedals are concerned, most of the time I just have a treble boost pedal on with the full setting on in GarageBand to give it a more rounded sound. And I tweaked this a little bit for the lead sound because I want that to stand out and maybe have a slightly creamier texture, if that makes any sense. But it's basically variations of that from song to song. And I say variations because obviously every song demands a certain emotional tone, a certain color, if you will. But that is basically it.